Kia ora, good morning. Welcome to Connecting the Dots podcast. Today, while I have my morning coffee with the little mild windstorm blowing outside around me, I love this kind of weather. It's so dark and wet and windy, and it's some of my favourite kind of weather. Stormy weather is some of my favourite kind of weather, next to snowstorms and heavy rain and thunder. It must be the Scorpio in me ruling death in the occult. I don't know. I love this sort of weather. I'd take it over a sunny day any day. Anyway, so this morning I would like to talk about a particular serial killer and his motives behind doing what he did. I've known about this man before, and it was while doing research for ideas for podcasts that I came across a Rob Gavigan video in regards to him, and it prompted me to need to say something because I think this case needs a lot of explaining from an Indigenous and shamanic high priestess point of view, rather than talking about him and the murders he committed, but the name he got, the things that people are saying about all of this afterwards. And, this is no reflection on Rob, but there's a lot of things that I feel need explaining about this man in this case, because it is something that we are all having to deal with the after effects of now, which is why high priestesses like me, people with my Indigenous knowledge and background in that, are now having to do the things that we're doing to repair the collateral damage that these kind of behaviours and activities have inflicted on my Papa Tuanuku, on my grandmother Earth. So I'm going to explain just briefly who he is, and then I'll go into the rest. So today we're going to talk about the black magic serial killer, Ahmad Suradji, who was an Indonesian shaman who killed 42 women between the ages of 11 and 30 between 1986 and 1997. Now, he was an Indonesian shaman and apparently like a cattle farmer, and women used to come far and wide to have this shaman do rituals for them. It was for things like prostitutes would go to him so that they could get more clients, so that they could make more money. Single women used to go to him to find a good husband. Women used to go to him to do rituals where their husbands would be faithful and not beat them, that sort of thing. He focused primarily on women clients. It was the women who were drawn to him. Now, sorry if I go quiet, it's because I'm having my coffee. I can't not have my morning coffee. He had a dream where his father told him that in order to receive untold power, to be the most powerful shaman he could be, he would need to sacrifice 70 women and drink their saliva after they were dead in order to gain superpowers. And so he did. He started to kill these women. Now he was selective. He didn't just kill like the 70 that turned up next. Like, he knew that he had to be very careful about what he was doing, and he got away with it for almost 12 years. And he thought he was invincible. And then, of course, obviously, he gets caught because of a brave taxi driver, coming forward and speaking a truth about a client he had dropped off at Ahmad's place. And, an investigation ensued, because what happened was his last victim, a passerby saw like basically a grave and was curious and dug a little bit and saw a human body, ran and got help. You know, it was all over the news. The taxi driver came forward and said, I knew that woman, I dropped her off at this address. So obviously they did the investigations, and they found 42 girls and women's bodies with their heads facing his home, Ahmad's home. And he was subsequently, you know, sent to trial and charged and given the death sentence. And he was executed by firing squad. My problem is this. Because of stories like his getting out, people are under the misconception, and I have to clear up so many misconceptions and misunderstandings in this industry, it's not funny. People are under the misconception that his father came to him in a dream and told him he had to kill 70 women and drink their saliva. But what people need to understand is that our dreams talk on behalf of our subconscious mind. Our dreams talk on behalf of our conscious mind, and our subconscious mind interprets the signals in the form of dreams. What you need to understand is that he was a very sick and twisted, depraved man. So his conscious mind was in the underworld. His conscious mind was in a dark place. Just because you sleep and dream and connect to your conscious mind, it doesn't mean your conscious mind is connected to the atomic frequency. The atomic frequency is where the gods reside, where your purest, most noble ancestors live. They are the ones that guide you on your path to ascension. They are the ones that help you deal with things like guilt and crises and emergencies and that sort of thing. They're the ones that help strengthen your faith and bolster your determination and your will and your strength to survive. They're the ones that guide you on your path. They're the ones that help you see a better vision for your future. They're the ones that lead your faith. They are the ones who, basically surround you with the light of all that is pure and virtuous, all that is honest and truthful, in order to help your soul evolve to a higher state of being, to a higher consciousness. And it is pure atomic frequency of love, light, purity, honesty, integrity, honor, stability, that sort of thing. But your conscious mind and the strength of your conscious mind is based on the level of your purity and your virtues. In the highest form of conscious frequency, you are honest, you are an upstanding citizen, you practice your virtues. So you don't have vices, so you don't lie, you don't get drunk and beat people up, you don't steal, you're not promiscuous, you're not greedy or gluttonous, that sort of thing. Your verses and your vices. You're hardworking and you are charitable and you have humility, and you're a humble person and you work hard and you're honest and you help your community and you do what's right by yourself and by your people and by your ancestors and by your gods, that sort of thing. That's your conscience at its highest form. Your conscience at its lowest form are the vices, which is why your vices are sins and your virtues are heavenly virtues, evil vices. So in your conscience in your lowest form, it's depravity, it's lying, it's cheating, it's stealing, it's drinking, it's committing adultery, it's murdering, it's hurting, it's causing suffering, it's inflicting pain on people purposefully. It's doing the opposite of everything is right and good and true and wholesome, by humanity, by your spiritual development, by your gods and by your ancestors. And when he had his dream, it was his conscious mind telling his subconscious mind that he was tipping over the edge of being an outright appearing civil human being to a depraved human being. There was obviously a desire in him, a deep-seated desire to hurt women, probably stemming back from either a hatred of his mother, or being hurt by a female family member, or his first love growing up. But there was definitely a betrayal there with him as a child, surrounding either, like the matriarch or a matriarchal figure in his family, or, like a first love, a female in his life that he either was betrayed by, or was let down by, or hurt by, or something like that, and it planted a very dark seed inside his soul that manifested into something darker and greater as he got older. Now, he had 3 wives, but he was a Indonesian shaman, and in some of these cultures they do that sort of thing. I don't know why. I think that a stronger person stays committed to one partner forever. There's no, a strong person with a strong will and a strong soul and a strong dedication to, their craft and their love and their work and their gods, and that would never dream of having multiple spouses, because it's harder work making one relationship work. If you can plant that seed and let it grow into into an oak tree, then that oak tree is going to be far stronger than anything you plant afterwards. The original point of love, or the original point of marriage, there is nothing stronger. But he had 3 wives. One of them apparently was even helping him lure some of these women in to him, going out onto the streets, making out like he was something bigger and better than he actually was, trying to sell him so that she could lure women to him, so that, she could profit from it, because he used to take the clothing, he would bury the women naked, and he would take their clothing and their purses and their jewelry and things like that, and, she used to benefit from some of the things that he was taking off his victims. There's no evidence to suggest that the other 2 wives knew what was going on, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that one of them did. So he obviously, the fact that he had 3 wives, he obviously had no respect for women in the first place. And so this deep-seated, deeply rooted hate of women manifested growing up as a man, and at some point he snapped. And so he had this dream where his father said to him, if you kill 70 women and drink their saliva, you will become all-powerful. He must have, what I'm guessing is, he may have been mocked and ridiculed and berated. And so his need to want to feel powerful and strong and have control over women is what, made him proclaim himself to be a shaman. The fact that he buried the women in the ground from the waist down, and then strangled them with cords in order to get them to salivate so he could collect the saliva to drink it. He was showing that level of control over the woman. So obviously, whatever happened to him as a child, he felt like he had no control over. And by stripping the women naked, he wanted to, embarrass them and degrade them and belittle them, which is why he also targeted prostitutes. He wanted to inflict the same kind of pain and embarrassment and humiliation on these women that he had been subjected to by the woman or women in his life who planted this dark seed inside his traumatic mind as a little boy growing up. He obviously felt like he had no power and control over his life or his situation growing up, and this was his way of thinking this is what he had to do to not only get power and control over the women in his life. Maybe his wives were all ganging up on him, or maybe he was feeling like what he was doing wasn't enough for them. I don't know. He may have been suffering from wee man, little man syndrome or something like that. I don't know. But there was definitely a need to want to prove himself to be a big man on campus. And so his subconscious mind um, had the interpretation of the dream where he thought his father was saying to him, this is what you need to do in order to get supernatural powers. Because in the Bible, it does say, like, it is known throughout, religious theology, especially Catholicism, that God says if you master your 7 virtues, as well as hope and faith, you will be rewarded with supernatural powers. I can attest to that because it's what happened to me. My ability to time jump, my ability to manifest manifest into reality whatever it is that I write down. If I see it in my head and I write it down, I can make it happen. I can manifest it. I've proven that time and time and time again. My Instagram and my Twitter and my LinkedIn and my YouTube is full of me putting my theories to the test and putting myself out there in public, risking my freedom, risking my life, risking my reputation, putting it all on the line, as all scientists do, to prove that their science and their scientific theories are correct. And so you are granted supernatural powers when you master your virtues. It is real, it is proven, and my whole fight with trying to get justice for my sons and I is because I was mocked and judged and ridiculed and persecuted because as an Indigenous woman, I am a high priestess. I am like a Māori version of a shaman, but I call myself a high priestess because, I'm also Egyptian as well. And it's my dad's side of the family and my dad's ancestral gods and that who have been the most prominent in helping me come to this point in my ascension where I've mastered my ascension, and now I am being given the task to take all my knowledge of the occult sciences and that and put it out there through my podcasts and shows, because of the fact that there are so many people who have this misunderstanding of what the occult is, and because people fear what they don't understand, it's creating a lot of turmoil in this world. And people like Ahmad, uh, everything that he did in his practices as a shaman has had a knock-on effect, like the butterfly effect. Everything he did back then in the 80s and 90s is one of the reasons why, our planet has had to go on and suffer now. The things we do in the past affects what happens in the future. And so, speaking of dad, when you dream of your father, fathers in dreams represent the law, represent justice, represent protection and security. So, what was actually happening was he was in his dream, he was having like a battle of the conscious minds, of the 2 stages of consciousness, subconscious and conscious. And he was being warned. He thought it was his father, but his father was representative of the law, of what was going to happen, the consequences of what was going to happen. The dream that he had of being told that he had to drink the victim's saliva, when you're talking about dreams, anything to do with the mouth, it is talking about truth. It is talking about gossip. It is talking about lies. It is talking about things that you say, the words that you are putting out, having a beneficial or detrimental effect on your future based on your level of purity, the strength of your virtues. The fact that he was told to drink the saliva of these innocent women, he was thinking that by drinking their saliva, because these women were pure and innocent, because these women were pure or innocent, because some of them were prostitutes, so they weren't necessarily pure, but that doesn't mean to say they weren't pure of heart. Like, just because a woman is a lady of the night, it doesn't mean that she's not a good, kind person. It just means that maybe that's what she's had to resort to in order to put food on the table for her kids, you know. So there's different levels to everything in this world, and the trouble that people have is that they're very linear focused, they're very single-minded, closed mind focused. They will just see something for what it is and judge it based on that alone. So without taking into consideration the reasons why, or that, you know, are they even seeing the truth? We know that from my story, you know, personally. So the fact that, you know, the whole drinking of the saliva thing in his dream, he was thinking, you know, he was taking in the essence and the purity of his innocent victims, of his sacrifices, when in actual fact he was being told that the lies that he was telling people, the being a false prophet, being a fake shaman, what he was putting out into the world through, yes, I'm a this and I'm going to do this and this is what you need to do, follow me out into the sugarcane field, this is going to happen and I will help you, blah blah blah. Those lies that came out of his mouth, in order to tempt those women, will end up being the poison that he drinks, i.e. the saliva, and that justice will come, i.e. his dad, in the form of truth being spoken. So then what happened was, obviously, when his last victim disappeared, she had said to the taxi driver, don't tell anyone where I've gone. And then when her body turned up, his consciousness, because he was obviously a righteous man, and wanted to do the right thing by the victim and her families, he spoke the truth. He defied her plea to not tell anyone where she'd gone, and he spoke the truth and did the right thing, and through that justice was served. And that's what his dream was trying to tell him. But because he wasn't in a virtuous place, because his psychological mind wasn't balanced, he completely misinterpreted that whole entire dream, and it ended up costing him his life. Now, the other thing that I want to say is that people need to understand two things. The first one is, it doesn't matter whether you call yourself a shaman, a high priest or priestess, a witch doctor, a sorcerer, a wizard, a magician, whatever. It doesn't matter the name you call yourself. If you take a life, be it animal, mineral, or vegetable, without permission, you become the sacrifice. So anyone in their right mind, in their right mind being their higher conscious mind, you know, the right atmosphere of the brain is, you know, where your faith is, where your consciousness is, you know, where your connection through, you know, the neurotransmitters that go through the pineal gland and, you know, up into the universe and all of that. That's all the right side of the brain. So, you know, anyone in their right mind who practices the occult would never dream in a million years of taking the life of an animal or a human or even a plant. If you are ordained to do what you do, to speak on behalf of the planets and the ancestors in order to prepare mankind for their life and their death and their evolutionary spiritual process, you don't touch a single blimmin' thing. You don't touch a plant, you don't touch a tree, you don't touch a shellfish, you don't touch an animal, you don't touch nothing without permission. And if you take anything without permission, whether the person, you know, has to willingly, of free mind, without mind manipulation, without drug coercion, without mind control, without hypnosis, they have to freely give themselves in order for it to be a fair exchange. Throughout time, you'll hear of human sacrifices where they were prepared before ritual, where they were given alcohol and they were given things to eat and given things to drink and blah blah blah, in order to impair their mind, impair their will, impair their faith. That's not, you know, even the ones that knew that they were going to be sacrificed, that is not a willing sacrifice. And there is no animal in the history of the earth that would ever say, yeah, go on, chop my head off, do this, do that, drink my blah, 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 blah. What people need to understand is that all life in the universe emanates on one pure frequency. And depending on your genetic history, depending on your upbringing, will determine the level of your purity. If you've come from abuse and psychological trauma and, molestation and, sexual assaults and that sort of thing, all that kind of stuff, if you've come from a family history of, the women being beaten and the men being drunks and, people always in prison and that sort of thing, you're here on earth to break that generational curse. So, you might get angry at your partner, but you don't raise your fist. You might want to drink, but you have a couple, but you don't get drunk. You might have the opportunity to steal someone's wallet, but you don't do it. That sort of thing. It is up to you and you alone to break your generational curses. And when you do that, you start ascending. You start rising above the abuses that you've just left, because you are magnetically pushing away from the negative vibrations with which you were raised by and becoming a higher vibrational being. So then you start, practicing more of your virtues and that. So anyone who does black magic, who, like a real shaman, a real high priest or priestess would never just wander into a forest and chop a tree down, would never just wander into the back garden and pull some herbs out of the garden. We're not allowed to do that. Everything has to be timed, divinely timed and divinely guided. And then there are rituals, there are things that you have to put in place before you pick the rosemary, before you pick the lavender, before you, take the Palo Santo wood from the tree. Oh God, and that's another thing. Palo Santo, there is nobody in the world that should be selling or using Palo Santo that hasn't come from like Ecuador and Peru and all that, because the Palo Santo tree is a highly, highly, highly sacred tree. And there are only a handful of people in those tribes that are allowed to have access to that tree. So anybody out there in the world that is using or selling Palo Santo, they are contributing to the natural disasters that we are now facing in this world and that our descendants will face in the future. You should not, under any circumstances, be using Palo Santo. So my question is someone stealing the wood from these trees from Ecuador and Peru and all that? Or is there someone within those villages who are selling it to make a profit and defying ancestral codes? Because that wood should not be getting out into the general market. That is not the kind of wood that should be given access to the general population, and yet it's everywhere, and everybody's burning it on YouTube and selling it on eBay and in these spiritual stores and that, and it should not be seen on the market anywhere. These are sacred trees that can only be used by ancestral permission through the bloodlines to for the shamans to use of those villages. So how is this wood getting out? Is there a corrupt indigenous shaman who has defied ancestral guides and codes and is selling this wood to make profit, or is it being stolen? But if you've got Palo Santo in your house or you're selling it on your stores, you are contributing to everything that's going on in the world right now. All these natural disasters are because of you and because of people who are doing animal and human and plant sacrifices in their rituals without being ordained or having the bloodline permission to do so. Nobody who practices the occult in the right way would ever dream of taking a life in order to do it. Nobody. And because this is something that has been done for, centuries upon centuries, this is why our world history is littered with disasters and diseases and famine and war, because our planet is a living, breathing human. I was going to say human planet, living, breathing planet, just like every other atom in the universe. And all atoms reflect energy and absorb energy. And we reflect what we absorb. We reflect what we absorb, and it recycles over and over again. And the human soul is no different. So she, grandmother, Papatūnuku, Te Whiti, Gaia, whoever you want to call her, Mother Earth, she is reflecting all the pain and suffering back that we as humans have inflicted upon each other in order to gain power and control and, money and position and, crowns and militaries and she's absorbed all of that bloodshed, all that pain, all that fear, all that suffering, and she plays it back as earthquakes and avalanches and landslides and tsunamis and, floods and death and disease. She is simply reflecting back to us all that we have given to her. And it is absolutely abhorrent. And a real shaman, a real high priest or priestess, someone who is doing it properly through their indigenous right, if they have been raised properly to do this properly, they are guardians of Earth. They are guardians of the universe. They are guardians to the planets and all life in the universe. We are the guardians to it. We are the gatekeepers. It is our job to speak on behalf of the planets, to speak on behalf of the gods and the ancestors and that, in order to teach our communities and our villages and that how to be the best versions of ourselves that we can possibly be, so that we can all work together to protect the planet. But there are so many people out there spreading lies about what the paranormal is, about what the supernatural is, making up all these stories and fake videos and, speaking to give their tummy a grumble about things they know nothing about, selling these tools for occult practices and that they have no permission to do, that they know nothing about, just because the occult is cool and sexy and a bit kind of like dark and mysterious sort of thing. And they don't realize that there is a knock-on effect that is detrimental to not just their life, but the life of everybody else that's going to come after them, and especially Grandmother Earth, who will still be here, being forced to try and recover from the after effects of the millennia of what stupid man has done in order to try and gain power and wealth and control over their lives and the people around them and the planet and blah blah blah. She's going to have to deal with the after effects of that long after we're gone, when we've left this planet and we've joined the brethren in the space race and all that sort of thing. Like, she's going to have to deal with the after effects of that. She will never be the same. The only saving grace is that she's a very resilient planet, and it might take her a while, but eventually nature will take over and she will eventually heal. But she shouldn't have to in the first place. If we respected the planet the way she was given to us by the gods and ancestors, we wouldn't see half of the death and destruction that we've had going on, especially over the last 20-30 years. Like, it's been horrendous. We're horrible to each other. We're worse to the planet, and we're even worse to animals and plants. And just because you're a billionaire doesn't mean you're going to get away with not being held responsible for anything you've done that was a lie sold as a dream, or a lie sold as a vision. You will pay for what you've done. If it's not in this life, it's going to be in the next life. You will not be going to a higher place when your time comes. I can guarantee you that. Any lie that you sell people will come back to haunt you at some point. The other thing is, so basically what I'm saying in regards to the black magic is, do not engage with anyone or anything that is taking from the planet that has caused a life to suffer. People need to understand as well, plants bleed. Plants feel pain. Trees feel pain. Trees record songs. Trees record the sound of time within its wood, within its bark. You know, the bark are the bark of a tree is no different to like the lines on the skin of your hand, or you know, the lines on your palm. And when you chop a tree down, it feels pain. When you pull a vegetable or a herb or a flower out of the ground, it feels pain. So you can go on and say, you know, be a vegan, and that, you know, just eat plants and blah blah blah, but plants feel pain too. You know, mushrooms, for example, the bit that you pull out of the ground, you're eating their genitals. The part of the mushroom that is out of the ground is the genitals of the brain that lives in a community under the soil. So, like, mushrooms have a whole ecosystem, have a whole community, a whole conscious community that lives under the soil, where its brains, where the brains of the mushroom are all connected as one to live as one, like, functioning brain. And the bit that you chop off that's hanging above the ground is actually their genitals. And so they feel pain. And they also have memory. Mushrooms are able to remember things. So, you know, you've got to think about this, but they don't. People who are vegans and that, they don't think about the, you know, it's all right to save the animals, but what about the plants? Why is it okay for the plants to have to suffer but not the animals? And I am not saying that we should be slaughtering animals and that, because I'm against all that sort of thing. I personally, and I've said it before, think we should only be eating animals that die of natural causes. And that there should be a healthy balance, and there is a way to harvest plants and vegetables and that without it causing pain for them. You know, the roots of a plant, the roots of a tree, the roots of flowers, all of that, they are no different to the central nervous system of the human body. And that's what you need to understand. And when you're taking them from the ground, you're ripping them out of the womb of their mother, i.e. Papatuanuku, Grandmother Earth. So there's a way to go about it. There's a way to do it. The other thing is that, how do I put this politely? There was a comment in the video about making reference to the fact that there are some cultures in this world that still have shamans and high priestesses and that sort of thing, that these indigenous cultures and these older, you know, like Eastern and Asian and African and Polynesian, Mesoamerican bloodlines, and that they still go to shaman for help. And that it is, there is a connotation of it being, you know, that's so middle-aged, that's so Neanderthal, like, you know, like why do people still rely on these, you know, silly practices and that? But as I've just explained, a shaman, a real shaman, a proper shaman or high priestess, or, you know, whatever you want to call them, the real ones, they are there to make a community strong. They are there to watch over the growth and development of the villages, individual spiritual development, so that they can live and grow and raise their families and raise their flock and their, you know, their cattle and all that sort of thing, raise their businesses, you know, live their lives to the best potential of their ancestors, so that they can enrich the village, enrich their family, enrich their bloodline, you know, expand their genealogical history, you know, in a good way, in a positive way, to help tip the balance in a good way, so that, you know, when they die, their soul evolves to a point where not only are they making their gods and ancestors proud, but they're making their descendants proud. And there's a, you know, there's a level of honor that gets handed down when you know you come from someone who was an honorable, good, decent, virtuous person. We all have people in our bloodline that we can boast, oh yeah, I'm related to so and so. And, you know, like with me, the mighty chieftain Te Raupraha, Te Reo Paraha. He's one of mine. I'm a descendant of his. He was a great Māori chieftain who, has the respect of every Māori person in New Zealand. My family are married into, the Bruce family, Robert the Bruce, the last king of Scotland. My ancestors, my Fraser of Lovat ancestors, helped form the United Nations, and they also saved a lot of forest in Canada, through their work with conservation and that sort of thing. So we've all got people in our bloodline because they did the right thing, because they were honourable, noble, decent people. Their honour gets passed on, and shaman help people pass on an honourable legacy. They also are there to protect them when they get sick, because they know the plants and herbs and that to use when given permission to use them. They also do things like they counsel troubled marriages. They help pregnant women have safe births and deliver healthy babies. There's a whole range of roles and responsibilities that a shaman has, or that a high priest or high priestess has, that has nothing to do with like chopping the head off a thing and spilling the blood and that sort of thing. That's the bad stuff. They're not people who are doing it for noble purposes. And you can tell that because in all the cultures or villages around the world where humans and animals and plants are sacrificed, they are all countries that have suffered and are suffering from the ravages of war, famine, poverty, and disease. And they don't realize it's because that their shamans and their practitioners and that are doing these sort of things, that is the reason why the village or the town or the country or even the continent, if it spreads wide enough, is cursed and never gets out of the troubles of war and strife and conflict and disease and famine and poverty and suffering. So then people like me are put here. I'm here. I've been put here to go through everything that I've gone through, to learn everything that I've had to learn, so that then I can build my little empire and have my podcasts and have my shows and have my education centre and my museum and all of that, to put it out there, to invite people in, to say, this is what's going wrong. This is what we need to do to fix it. I'm going to show you how, like when I do my shows and that with my biorhythmic field generator, because my biorhythmic field generator is going to help sew up all the rips and tears and scars that were inflicted on Papatuanuku, on Grandmother Earth, Te Whiti, Gaia, whatever, Mother Earth. My biorhythmic field generator is going to stitch up the tears and rips of pain and suffering and sorrow that were inflicted on this planet, so that she can begin to heal energetically, so that she is less volatile. Because when she is suffering, that's when her husband, the father planet, grandfather Earth, Ranganui, father Sky, that's when he gets angry and starts defending his wife. And so when we have volcanic eruptions and floods and tsunamis and that's because Ranganui is trying to protect his wife. And that is the wrath of his anger at watching his wife suffer at the hands of the people that she was entrusted to take care of. And we're literally stabbing her in the back for everything that she has done for us since the dawn of time. Since the first spark of life of creation on Earth, and we've literally stabbed her in the back. So now people like me, my sons and I, are coming along to sew up those wounds where she was stabbed, to help her heal. So my podcast will eventually become my radio shows when I start my radio station. And then, of course, my eye in the sky shows where I'll actually go out on location and use my biorhythmic field generator after investigating places of paranormal and supernatural activity. And then, I'm explaining it all to you so that you can take responsibility for yourself, pay off some karmic and ancestral debt, break some ancestral curses, so that the planet that we leave behind is in a far better state energetically than the planet our ancestors left behind, because we are now responsible for cleaning the mess that our ancestors made, especially when it comes to, because the highest vibrations on earth is laughter, music, love, and faith. And if anything is done using those four things to hurt man or affects the planet in a negative way, then that descends us all. We all pay for it energetically because of the after effects that it has on this earth. So I am putting it all out there. I am helping people through, the medium of laughter and music and love and faith, to show people how it's done so that we can break these ancestral curses and do something to actually fix the planet, because it doesn't matter what our presidents and our prime ministers and our rulers and our leaders and our kings and queens are doing. That doesn't matter. Anyone that has hurt you, or anyone that is tyrannical or dictatorial, or has caused you harm or loss, or threatens you with because of your opposing views and that sort of thing, that's none of your business. If they are doing wrong by you, they will be dealt with by the gods and ancestors. You are here to focus on you. You are to deal with you now, because what you are and who you are now has a knock-on effect of what you will become in the future and who your descendants become in the future. So don't worry about anybody else. You just deal with you, as Marcus Aurelius says. Don't focus on everybody else, even if they're saying things in the media or saying things politically that you don't agree with. It doesn't matter, because whatever position they hold on this earth isn't as powerful as the position that God holds and the ancestors, the righteous ancestors, hold above them. They will be made to be held accountable for anything that they're saying or doing that goes against the laws of nature or goes against the laws of the universe. Okay? So you just put them aside, put your personal opinions aside, and focus on the here and now, and focus on you. Work on all the things that you need to work on to fix yourself and to fix your life around you, with the purest intention and the highest morals, and with the deepest, most honourable levels of integrity that you have, in order to break any generational curses or childhood woundings that were planted in you as a child. Fix them and deal with them, and let everybody else be dealt with by the gods and ancestors. You focus on you. You get to plant a brand new seed that can grow a rich bounty, a beautiful, bountiful harvest, just by you deciding not to get caught up or not to get dragged into anything that it causes, like anger, hurt, pain, rage, addiction, like the need to want to like self-medicate and self-soothe in a negative way, to act out in a negative way. You're the one that has control over what you do next. Whatever someone says or does to you has no consequence until you react to it. And you are the one that controls how you react to what was said or done about you. Nobody puts a gun to your head and says, go and shoot up a blah, or, go and take drugs, or, beat that person, or what. Nobody is forcing you to do that. You are the one that actively decides how you're going to react to a situation in and around you. When you have that understanding that you are the one that controls what happens next, that you are the one that sews the next thread into the fabric of your timeline, it completely changes your life for the better. Because then when you only make the right choice isn't always the easiest choice. Sometimes it's just better to do the easier thing than to do the right thing. The right choice is the harder choice, but the right choice gives you the greater rewards because it is truth and it is integrity and it is honor and it is pure and it is virtuous, because the right way is the truthful way and the truth sets you free. So, I don't know what I'm going to title this podcast, but I'm putting it out there, and obviously, like I keep saying, when we move to Canada and I get my radio show up and running, I'll put more of this stuff out there. I would even I've been thinking I would even give talks in halls if people wanted it, and obviously as well making my shows, because there's so many places around the world that I need to go to use my biorhythmic field generator. My boys and I have been making a list for years. So, so I'm putting it out there. I'll put a couple of links in the description box below just so that you can learn about the black magic serial killer. I am here to educate you all, and obviously when I open the Alchemist Cavern and get my museum and education centre up, I'll be able to explain all this sort of stuff. But what you need to take from it really is don't believe everything you're told. Just because somebody calls themselves a shaman doesn't mean they are. Just because somebody sells Palo Santo and crystals doesn't mean that it's going to help you in your spiritual development or even protect you. Everybody who knows me knows that I cannot abide anybody mining crystals, because it's ripping the organs out of my papatuanuku. And then you're taking, her prettiest organs home for the benefit of your own purpose, at the detriment of the planet, and nobody thinks about that. It's no different to harvesting someone's organs. When she has pebbles and rocks and stones and empty shells and that do the exact same thing, but because they're considered the moles and freckles of the planet, nobody wants them, and yet she's literally offered them and nobody wants them. But like I said, my Alchemist Cavern Education Centre, I'll be able to teach people this sort of thing, and I've made up a pile of talismans made from rocks and stones and shells and that my sons have gathered, although they're at my ex's house, and we've decided to leave those there because they've now absorbed the negative energy of what he's done to me and my children, and because he's in a very dark place. I don't want to use those stones and rocks and shells and all of that in my talismans, so we've decided to just leave those there and start again. And when we're out recording my Eye in the Sky shows and that, we will start collecting more things that have been given on offer to us that I will remake into talismans to sell at the Alchemist Cavern. They will be made to order, they will be made on the spot, because each rock and stone and shell and whatever, it tells you who it belongs to when you pick it up, and tells you what it's for and what it's to be used for. So I will catalogue every rock and stone and shell and whatever, and my staff will know when the customer comes in what it is they're looking for. They will know exactly which stone and which rock is for who, because it will already have assigned itself to the customer before they come in. And then we will make it up on the spot for them, and they will all be blessed and cleansed. And then they can take it away and they will have that protection, and I will gather them from all over the world on my travels with my sons and I when we go out and make the Eye in the Sky shows. So, okay, so I'm going to go and finish my cold coffee, and I've got some offerings to put out for the birds and stray cats. So I will let you go, and I will let you sit with that. If you have any questions, I'll put my email in the description box below. And you know where I am if you need me. Feel free to DM me on Twitter. I don't use Instagram anymore, but if you don't have Twitter, you can DM me on Instagram or email me. If you have any questions or concerns or anything like that, you know where I am. People who do sacrifices are themselves the sacrifice. They are a test to see how easily the devil can tempt them into turning to the dark side. Okay, so if you have been affected by animal or human sacrifice, know that which was sacrificed um, goes to the light. They do not go to the dark. The devil and Satan have no interest in tempting the innocent to the dark side. Everything that they offer, everything that they promise, is to see how easily a person can turn to the dark side. So if someone is prepared to make a sacrifice for the devil, the sacrifice of the person or animal or whatever that was given up, the devil sends straight to God. And the person who made the sacrifice was the true target. The one who did the sacrifice is the target, is the soul the devil wanted in the first place. He wanted to see how far they would go, to test their faith, to test the strength of their purity. And the second they take a life, the devil has them in a soul contract, and then that's when Satan takes over. Okay, because God is Satan when you offend him, and there is nothing God and Satan hate more than those who take the life or hurt the life of the pure and innocent. Okay, duality, just like we have Papatuanuku and Ranganui, the Mother Earth and Grandfather Earth, Grandmother Earth and Grandfather Earth, like everything in the universe has a dual nature. You have the Schumann resonance, you have the creation frequency, and that which resides within the frequencies and below the Schumann resonance are the ones who are drawn in by the dark arts and occult, the Satanism and devil worship and that sort of thing. And those who walk in pure faith, they're the ones that live in the creation frequency or the atomic frequency or God frequency, depending on God, atom, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go now, and I will speak to you later. Remember, hold your head up high. Remember you are loved, and have a beautiful day. Ka kite anō. Mwah.